Do you want your ice cream to taste better and to serve it up with a little more class? Well, you need an old-fashioned ice cream scoop just like this. And where are you going to get it? You're going to make it. And I'm going to show you how. Stick around. All right, welcome back to the shop. This is an exciting night because I'm gonna make this old-fashioned ice cream scoop, but in addition to that, we have in the house a live studio audience. Whew. That made me feel good after all the technical difficulties. All right, well, we are gonna make this ice cream scoop, and it's not gonna be anything ordinary. It's actually going to be made out of this exotic wood. It's called wenge, spelled W-E-N-G-E. And if you say it wenge, you'll be just ridiculed for the rest of your life. Wenge is the way to say it. So it's a hard, kind of exotic African hardwood. And it has this beautiful kind of brown color, and it can look almost like ebony at times, but it's got a nice texture and a nice look to it when it's finished. And I like the dark handle because it gives you that rich kind of old traditional look. So you could make this scoop out of quite a few different woods. We've got, check this out. This is like a quilted bird's eye. Can you see it in the light? Is it doing anything for you? You see it? They just went, What's that mean? All right, it's nice. It's nice. All right, so you could do that. I don't know, the white handle doesn't do it as much for me. I saw this at Goose Bay. It's coming out now as an ebony substitute called Catalox, K-A-T-A-L-O-X. And it's good to mention Goose Bay too, because they're an actual source. If you want to get some exotic hardwoods like this, but you don't feel like spending a ton of money, you can just mail order a billet like this where, I mean, you could get 3 handles out of a chunk like this. You really need to start with about a 1.5 by 1.5 square, and you're going to need about, this one's finished at 5 3/4 inches long. So you don't need a lot of wood to make a beautiful handle. We put a link for Goose Bay. Anything I mentioned tonight, we'll put a link there. And we don't have any sponsors officially, so just, it's actually real advice, things I like and I use. But here's one of the key factors. It's the scoop itself. I had a hard time finding these once. I saw them at a trade show once, and they were available, but then they discontinued them, and I have now found them online. We're going to give you the link for that as well. It's a company called Crooked Mill. What's nice about this ice cream scoop is we've got this tang, or the point. This is going to be inserted into the wenge, and these ribs on the outside that are going to give it stability. We have to drill a hole for the tang before we even start. Otherwise, it would be near impossible to drill it after we've turned this round. Now, the trick is that this hole has to be sized properly for that tang to fit just in there, and then you'll have to cut the grooves for those ribs after the fact. So this handle will actually be epoxied in at the end for long-lasting use. We've had ours for quite a few years and never had an issue with it. I still wouldn't throw it in the dishwasher. I mean, it is beautiful hardwood anyway. So, but here's the thing. We've got to drill that hole first, and to do that, you can have some calipers and just check the diameter of it. A 1/4 inch is too small, I have found. So see how that just fits over there. I have a bit, thankfully, I had this in the supply. This bit is slightly heavier. It's 9/32, okay? So that's gonna give us a 32nd over 1/4, but that will be just right for fitting this. It gives a little room for epoxy, and it won't be binding too much. Now, this bit, I didn't show you this, but it has an unusual tip to it. Rather than just the straight point, like a brad point, it's got kind of a flat point that is at 1/8 inch diameter right there before it hits the cutting edges. I'm not sure why it's like that, but what's that?
It's a bullet point.
A bullet point. I like that. That's a short point, I guess, right? So that bullet point is 1/8 inch wide. So in order to drill this accurately, I'm gonna first pre-drill with an 1/8 inch bit, just a tiny bit, so this will seat well. I'm gonna go over to the drill press. All right, so we've got our blank, and I've cut it square on each end. Now to hold this, we've got to end bore this, and it's gonna be a little shaky. So I found just to take a large kind of, these hand screw clamps are ideal because they'll stay flat and perpendicular. And I'm just holding this flat. I'm gonna lock it in. And now I've got a much more stable. Sometimes I'll even clamp that hand screw to the table to have absolute confidence I'm gonna hit the mark. But I'm just gonna freehand this because it's not that critical being an ice cream scoop. So I'll start with the first 1/8 inch. Here we go. Okay, that way this bullet point bit will now seat very nicely in that. It's hard to hit the center point with these bits, but there I'll just set it right into that 1/8 inch hole. And this, I can feel it's centered. And I'm gonna lift up. Okay, that's it. So we've got that, and now we have to make sure that the spur bit is seated. So I'm gonna find the center point. I made a little center mark here just by taking my marking gauge, and I went around all 4 sides like that. And then I can find the center of those 4 lines and just make a good first impression. There it is. Now we're gonna take our spur bit, set it in there, and we've got to seat that. It's going to be a little noisy. Okay. And okay, so now we're seated, and now this has a live taper, a live center is tapered on this end, a tapered point. So you really need that because that's centering into the hole that we just bored. So now we're centered right on the hole. We can just snug up gently on that and lock it in. Okay. All right. Now we've got our little pattern for this fun little scoop. You can see I've laid out the critical points on here. So you can see this is where the brass ferrule will go up the top, and then you have a little lip there. And then this deeper cove, that's where your index finger will go, right there. And then the larger bulb of the turning handle, and then a little decorative bead at the end, really. But it also gives you a little more stability. So this largest point is 1 5/16. So I'm going to set my largest calipers just to that, and we'll turn a cylinder in that area. And then this point here, this higher point, this is 7/8 right at that little high point there. And we'll have another pair of calipers set up to hit that. So then this little guy down here is 5/8, and in the swale here It's a little less than 5/8. We'll just kind of eyeball that. But one of the key things about making a handle like this is this brass ferrule. You want that to fit on there smoothly, but what that does is it gives you a lot of reinforcement. When you press and epoxy in the tang, it reinforces because it's kind of a narrow neck after you've turned that. You don't have a lot of material, but that just gives it a more permanence and a solid, long-lasting fit, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and turn this. Let's set up a couple of the calipers the way we just described. So I'm setting this largest one to 1 5/16. That's our large diameter. And then we'll get our next one at 7/8 like we have it here. And we're gonna save this small one. We've got our brass ferrule here. The outside diameter is 5/8 of an inch. The inside is about 9/16. But what we're gonna have to do is set our calipers just a touch heavy, and we're gonna fit this to the actual turning. We'll be able to remove and slide and test the fit. We don't want it too sloppy, and we don't want it too tight because we need to press this on. All right, so let's go ahead. Let me get my safety glasses on. Oh, I should note too, this scoop, the one I told you about that you can get in that kit, it comes with its own ferrule. It's this little, I don't know what it is. It's like a chrome, chintzy little, look at, that's like the worst thing, right? You put that on, you got this gorgeous looking, sparkling stainless scoop, and then that little, you just can't have that. I like the look of this brass ferrule. You can pick these up. We got a link for this, a little 10-pack, I think. You're gonna get really hooked on this. You might want two.
I'll put it on.
But I just throw this one away and use these brass ferrules. They give you the charm, the old world charm. So that's what we're using. We got the link for the brass ferrule pack as well. So check that out if you're into it. Okay, so sometimes you can pre-knock the corners off, but I'm gonna take them off with this roughing gouge, and you should give it a spin first. Make sure you're not gonna hit your tool rest, and make sure you're tight and ready to go. All right, here we go.
Always.
See, I can feel it's getting round. By resting the chisel on top and just check it out. Now, hopefully I didn't go too far. Nope, still got a little. So now I'm gonna switch to the skew and just a little more cleanly take it down. I know that this is the area right here of the fattest point, so I'm trying to focus there. So right about here is where I need that 1 5/16. So if I just get it good there, look at that, it's perfect. Didn't even plan that. All right, so I'm just gonna finish. Let's just get this about right. Now we got a nice cylinder. I'm going to shut it off. And at this point, we can make our critical location marks. So let's flip it around the correct way. I think you can see it that way, right? So here's that heaviest point. I want to make sure I have enough room over here. And then here's the swale where your finger's going to go, and that little bead. That's the high point of the 7/8. This is the low where we're going to be 5/8-ish. And then this is where the brass ferrule starts. So it goes right out to here. So I've got a good 1/8 of an inch extra to try fitting it first. And then once I establish that, we'll clean the rest. Then I can come over here to this small bead at the end And at this end here, we're going to be 5/8 diameter right for that bead. So let's use our pencil now on those marks. We're just going to spin a little bit and establish those lines. You don't have to be so exact about this. It's kind of nice that each scoop would be original and all its own.
Tom, did you learn to turn from Pug?
No, I didn't actually. I did learn to turn better from Pug. But I had learned that earlier. Actually, I went to vocational school for a couple years. So when I was 14 years old, I initially learned to turn, but not the right way. Now I learned the right way. Pug. All right, so here we go. There are a lot of ways to turn, but I mean a more efficient shearing kind of cut. All right, so those are my key points. This is going to help me now. I'm done with my 1 5/16, so I could actually change this one. Let's change this one to 5/8, because we know we're going to need that dimension here in a little bit. We've got the other one at 7/8. So here we go. That's 5/8. Good to go. All right, so let's go down to our 7/8 first right there. And we'll come in and get our tenon last. So we won't turn that down too small right off the bat. All right, here's our 7/8. Okay, that feels good. I do want to mention, I don't turn, I get in grooves with it. You know, you might do a lot of turning all at once and you get kind of feeling comfortable, then you get away from it and you come back. Some makers actually turn all the time, and those are the ones you want to watch. There's one guy, I love watching him because it's inspiring to see how beautifully he handles the tools, especially the skew chisel. And that guy, if you want to check him out on Instagram, is Steve the Wood Turner. Okay, he's in Europe. I think it's either England or Ireland. I think it's England. Guy is unbelievable. But he does that's all he does. He stands there and just a magician with turning. All right, so I'm just going to bring this speed down a little. I just want to cut a little lower, make sure. I'm not going to go all the way for the ferrule, but let's just go ahead and make a cut there and prep for that. Okay, so I've established that shoulder. This is going to be our low point of our 5/8. What the heck? Let's just go and we can take that down. Okay, it's actually a little less than 5/8, so that we're going to end up removing that. And then actually we're 5/8 down this end too, right here. This piece. Let me see how wide that bead is. Looks almost 3/8-ish. There's our bead. All right, so at this point we've established our high and low points. So we can now do some shaping between these points. So here I'll try to I'm trying to tap into my inner Steve the wood turner here with my half-inch skew chisel. I hope I don't have a catch. That's not fun. Here we go. We're just rolling down into the point. This is just to reiterate, just so you know what we're doing here. This is the end. We're creating the rounded fat part of the handle, and this is going to be the bead here at the end. So I'll just make a little cut in here. I can turn my skew the other way. There we go. That's pretty good. I don't think I want to go any deeper. If you have a little waviness, Steve would never do this. You can just touch it up like that. But that's more of a scraping cut. I would never do the scraping cut down on the end grain because it takes too long to remove the scratches from it. All right, so now I'm going to use more of a cove, and let's just a gouge, a spindle gouge here. Okay, we're working that little cove where your finger is going to kind of rest. I don't have a good edge on that. I'm going to try this one. Back the other way. Here I can use my skew again, actually, on this convex curve nicely. I'm going to try to get this to flow. You know, I'll have that kind of ball, and then I want this fluid, graceful curve like this handle. See, it's a little chunky right here. It's a little flat right there. I'm going to just get it more fluid. That's better. It's a little touch. Okay, now let's come back here. This is a little tricky here. So you're trying to get those two to meet in the middle there. That's pretty close. All right, so I can go ahead. Let's take care of this bead down here. Okay, then we'll just lightly touch it. So this is where it'll get cut off at the end, and that'll get sanded from the end. So we've got our bead, kind of flattish bead, nice handle. Check and see how it feels. Actually, it's better to turn it off. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's pretty close. I'm just gonna sand now and blend these with a little paper. And then, actually, let's go ahead and fit. We'll start fitting this, we'll sand at the end. So I've got to bring down this larger portion for the ferrule. Where is that? I don't know what I did with it.
Oh, it's to the left, huh?
It's to my left. That's why I love having people here. That would have been 10 minutes later. All right. So I'm going to just turn this end and we're going to try fitting it on there. Let's just get that down first a little bit. Okay, very light. Let's see how that is. Try the ferrule. Oh no, we're not quite there yet. A little heavy. Oh, just about. Just getting that first bit over. Once we establish it on that little 1/8 inch start, we'll reset our calipers and then we'll be able to cut the whole thing and know we're really close. So. Hopefully I didn't overshoot it. That feels good. Okay, so it's going on there just beautifully. I'm not forcing it. So now let's get it back in and we'll reset our calipers to that little tenon. We know that's perfect. So there it is. Just want to just feel it touching as it goes by, okay? So here, I can hear that sound and feel the resistance. That's the feeling I want to get all the way across, and then I'll know I'm pretty darn close to a fit. See, you can hear it. It's quiet, a little louder. Quiet. Quiet. Okay, let's get it in the middle. Okay, let's bring that all down now. We'll just blend these together. And see how it... Okay, I think we're good. And that ferrule gets epoxied on as well, so you need a little space there. Okay, so now let's see if the ferrule fits. Oh, it wants to go all the way, but then it stops that last little, it's going to file. I think the ferrule's got a burr. There we go. Okay, so that was what it was. So now you can see it's seating up there nice and tight. So at this point, we can put it back in, and we actually use the ferrule as our gauge. We need to turn that bead down just to the ferrule. So let's go ahead and see if we can do that without hurting the ferrule. That's the last bit, and then we can sand. Just about there. That looks perfect, right? Right down to it. So now I don't want to scar the ferrule when I'm sanding. Do I even have to sand that? I don't even really have to sand that bead because I was getting a nice shearing cut. So I'll stay away from it. Let's just go ahead and sand the main part of the handle. Take off our tool rest here.
So Tom,
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah, sure.
Steve says when sizing the diameter for the ferrule, he noticed that you divided the turning into 2 segments and then blended them. Do you get greater accuracy that way?
I feel like I do. I mean, it's just faster. I'm just trying to hit some points along. If I had a longer piece, I could have made multiple and then just blend them. If you're going for like this super, accurate spindle or some sort, It's just sort of a manual method for...
What grit is that you're using?
I've got 150 right here. If you had really heavy marks, you could use a little more. Now I'll go to 220. The hardest place to remove the scratches is on the end grain, but that's why you want that nice shearing cut, because there's very little to clean up when you have that, and that's just the artistry that you see. A really seasoned turner will barely ever even touch sandpaper, but it's hard if you're not doing it all the time. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so you can, if you have horizontal scratches, you can get them by sanding with the grain, like in this direction. That'll take out any scratches going around that might be problematic, rather than going through all the grits. Before you move to the next grit, you sand with the grain. So if I had 320, I would hit it with the 220 like this, and then I go right to the 320. But honestly, I'm pretty darn close. I'm gonna slightly break that sharp edge right there. I don't want to feel that every time I'm getting a nice scoop of mint chip, right? That's the camera lady's favorite.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we've got to now trim this end. This is a little tricky because we've got a hole in the middle there. So I'm going to go in really slow, and let's see. I'll take off just a little, and then we'll advance.
Would you ever burnish the handle, Tom?
You can, yeah. The burnishing is a method. You can use sometimes a fine grit, like pad, or you can just take sawdust like this. So watch, if we just take a handful of this stuff, and I'm gonna just kind of squeeze it and let the wood chips, those fine chips, are burnishing the surface, so you get a little more of a shine. It's kind of like a fine grit paper, almost a polishing shine. So when we shut it off, see, we've got a little more of a gleam.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good way, I mean, before you put your finish on. So that's about done before finish. We just have to trim that end, and then you would fit the tang. We'll see how much time we have for that. I don't want to touch the taper with my tooling here, but let's see. Actually, I don't even need to go all the way there. I'm going to just cut it right here. Then I think we can cut that off. I'm going to try to trim it. See, we've got the hole centered. If we cut all the way down, it's going to suddenly be free and unstable. So I'm going to just try with a Japanese saw here. Just very lightly come around. So here, I'm going to hold it right here. I've already got my cut. I just have to rotate. I don't want to cut my new bench. I'm feeling like I'm about to go through, and I'm not worried about the project. I'm worried about my new bench. Okay. Oh, so close. This wenge is tough. Okay, so there, now we could burnish that up too, but before that you'd have to fit the tang. So here we've already know that we can fit in there nicely, but while that ferrule is on there, we can bring it in. Let's see, I'm gonna go with the grain kind of here. So I'm gonna give it a push. I'm not worried about splitting it because I've got the brass ferrule on, but get a good firm push, and now I can see the indentations of those little ribs on there. So I've got a little veining chisel. This is a 11-1 veining chisel, and I'm going to put it right in there, and you have to basically cut a vein, like a groove down the inside, and keep it as straight as possible. So if you have another tool that you think you can do this with, by all means use that. But this actually, I found it works pretty fast. Remember, you're putting epoxy in here, so that'll have a filling quality. It's just getting it seated is a trick to start with. One thing I forgot to do while I had it in there was sometimes I'll take a fine like 1200 grit sandpaper, wet dry, and actually sand and polish the brass. But I think it's soft enough you could do it after too. Okay, so see those tangs, those little ribs are starting to go down, but then I can feel them stopping. So this is just like a little trial and error issue where you've got to just keep digging it. Oh, it's pretty close. All right, so I'm a little less than a quarter, but I would just work that until I had it. I'm just going to take the Japanese saw, and I'm going to cut this little bit off. Okay, so pretty close, and you could take a very fine file, just knock off any transition point there, but this is really very little. It's kind of unusual. And then you could hit it with 150, or I like to, you could take a palm sander and just knock it down. Let's just see if we can get it a little better than that. All right, not too shabby. Okay, so when that would be fitted in and you're all polished there, then you're going to just add some finish. So for this, something like this, I'd like a more water protective wiping varnish of some sort. So Tango varnish, even with a little urethane in it, will work fine. Lately I've been experimenting with Sutherland Wells. Waterlocks is good. What's that, Armor Seal with General Finishes would be a good choice for something like this, because you want it to hold up well with a lot of washings. Look at that, it's pretty nice. It's already, and you know, it feels pretty good in your hand as well. What I love about these is they're great gift items too. I mean, when you make something like this, it really does set apart from the average store-bought. And every time someone's having a little treat for themselves, they'll think of you with gratitude. All right, everyone. Well, thank you again for being with us, and thank you for the live studio audience. We love spending time with you in the shop, and thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit. On behalf of the camera lady and myself, we look forward to seeing you next time right back here on Shop Night Live. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. From all of us here to you. See you next week. Thank you.
I kind of like that one. It fits in your hair.